So this week I asked for I solicited some questions um, from you all. I wanted to get a sense of what you wanted me to talk about and what you're engaged with. There weren't that many, not that many of you sent in questions. There were a number, but not that many. There were a few, but I was surprised how few there were since you have so many questions when we're on here. But the ones I got kind of constellated. There was a kind of a theme around, unsurprisingly, dealing with conditions that are out of your control, dealing with climate change, dealing with the fires that are happening out here at the moment. And some of you I know are more affected directly by those than others. Some of you living up north or to the south a bit of where I am. And so our thoughts are with you, and we're here with you also. And I was just talking to a friend the other day who they had their car packed. Was this Friday? Their car was packed and they were ready to get into it at any moment. They didn't have to evacuate, but I know many have. And I think there's a common theme right now around fear and anxiety, and also around I think what are considered legitimate things to worry about. And so including, the climate and things like that. So that's what a lot of the questions that or I should say the few questions I got were mostly constellated around that territory. So I thought I would talk about that issue, but from a particular angle. I want to talk about, for lack of a better word, how we organize internally. How we, really three ways of accessing or connecting with inner stability. And the reason I want to focus on that is because regardless of the conditions that we're facing, and we as human beings are and have faced unthinkable conditions, right? And I realize I'm saying that in this moment in a place of, for me personally, not complete devastation, which I know some of you have been living through. In this human life, we all will go through that at various times, devastating loss. But so anyway, these things, I'm saying that because it's easy to talk about, right? But like all this stuff, but I want to take seriously the territory, and it is so. But I do think that we have to live this life, whatever it entails, and we have to find a way to inhabit it and maintain our not composure, because we can lose our composure many times, but to fortify ourselves internally so that we can face the conditions that come our way, and so that we can face them while connecting to our deepest values, or connecting and reconnecting to our deepest values, and hopefully also while living in a way that is overall, of course, we all have times where we lose it and are in despair and feel that everything is lost or we are lost. Everybody will go through that at times. But to find a way that is enhancing to move through challenges. That's why I want to focus on this core of like, how do we find inner resilience and inner stability as we face what comes through the course of our life, and maybe through these particular moments. And I'm talking about this also particularly because this is where the meditative practice can has something to offer. Of course, there are many, many ways of supporting yourself and finding support and moving through challenging times. And this is one avenue or one aspect. And it's very important, I think, to not make any one thing that you're engaged with, say like, that's the only thing, the only way. Yeah. Because that ends up being very limiting and very narrowing. And then you expect any one thing like, oh, inner fortitude, my own inner fortitude, that's supposed to carry me through everything. No, and sometimes we rely on each other's fortitude, and we are completely lost, and we need somebody else's hand, somebody else's heart, someone else's love. And that's very important too. So I'm saying that in the beginning so that you don't make some kind of single virtue out of anything that I say or anything at all, maybe. So I want to talk about 3 aspects of cultivating stability in the face of our challenging conditions. Yeah. And the first I've talked about a lot, so I'm not going to say too much about it, just a few points. The first has to do with just the cultivation of meditative concentration. I say meditative just because that's one way to cultivate it, but really the unifying of your attention. Right? And many of the things, of the 3 things I'm going to talk about tonight, each of these, there are parts of it that may sound simple to you, but I'm going to also talk about particular ways that we don't do what we already know how to do. That's kind of important. So the meditative concentration element is the simple aspect that when your attention is scattered, you have less inner fortitude. When your attention is hopping around and scattered and racy and racing, you feel diffuse and scattered, and it's very hard to face even small things. So that's one aspect that is important in terms of stability. Yeah. Just the gathering of the attention, whether it's with the breathing or gathering the attention in the body, feeling your feet on the ground, or gathering the attention to just inhabit the visual field or observe the visual field, that unifying or gathering your attention, just in the physical presence, feeling the feet on the ground, that gathering attention of unifying the attention makes the mind, say, the functionally stronger. Just like if you have, if you're an athlete, when your core is kind of like organized and your body is aligned, you're more powerful. And it's that the alignment allows for the functional power. You have that kind of core power, and that's but that's true with the mind maybe in a similar way. Let's say when the mind is gathered and unified, when you're fully present with what's arising, there's more fortitude there. And that's why the practice of being present, unifying the mind and living in that way where you're present in what you're doing, that's why that's so powerful. It makes you more powerful in whatever you're doing. And you know that just from your ordinary life. Now, one of the things I've noticed, interestingly, is that often when we need that, we don't do it. And often we don't gather our attention in the face of challenges because we think this is too important to not attend to right now. There may be things that are like that. But I think often there's this kind of like a tyranny of the immediate, right? It's like, oh no, I got to do this, I got to do this. And then the unifying of the attention, if we just took a few seconds, of course, if you don't practice this stuff, taking a few seconds is not going to do anything for you, or not much, because you don't have much relationship to unified mind. That's why daily practice is so important. That's why living in a way that's present and coming back to this again and again. When walking, you're walking. When talking, you're aware and talking. When you're doing the dishes, or when you're doing some physical activity, or you're working, building, you're present in that is how we cultivate moment to moment, this kind of capacity. Yeah. And then it's when you have a capacity, then if you choose to connect with it, then it's more available. It's available to you. If you haven't cultivated it, it's not there. Yeah. Or it'd be hard to access, you know. So that's one important dimension. And you know this from your experience. You're about to go into you're about to take care of something, you're about to have a difficult conversation, you're about to figure out what you're going to do. If you took a minute or two or a few minutes just to gather yourself, it doesn't mean that thing's going to be easy. It doesn't mean you're super clear about what to do. That makes a difference. Yeah? So that is one dimension, and it's an important one. It's almost like without that, it's like if you're trying to lift some heavy weight or something and you don't organize your body in a way that allows you to do that safely and I don't know if ergonomically is the right terminology, but just like with correct alignment, one, it's easy to get injured, and two, it's much harder to be powerful. And it's like you won't be able to lift it unless you're organized correctly. When you're organized correctly, you may still not be able to lift it, but you have more of your capacity. So that's sort of important. My first teacher, Larry, used to talk about use the metaphor of the three little pigs, house of straw, house of sticks, house of bricks. Limited metaphor, but still okay. Right? That's like without any cultivation, it's like the house of straw. Just little things blow it over. When there's some cultivation, or at times when it's more unified, takes a bigger wind. When the mind is actually very unified, it takes a bigger wind. And again, you know that from your experience. Even without meditating, sometimes the conditions are just such that you're unified in your presence and you can face all kinds of things in those moments. All of this is a moment-to-moment situation. So I'm saying that so that you don't neglect that aspect of the cultivation and that aspect of the practice in real time. That pause, the pause that both remembers and allows for you to gather, just to rebalance, to come, that pause is huge. It's priceless. And it's very hard. People are not in the habit of pausing and attending to this vehicle before we go drive it into something or drive it. So is this that's the simplest aspect. Again, I've talked about that a lot. That kind of unification with the breathing. One of our grand teachers, Ajahn Buddhadasa, he used to talk about the doggy mind and a lion mind. He used to say, I don't know if they have lions in Thailand, so I don't know where this came from for him, but he used to say like, you throw a stick for a dog, it'll just chase after it. But if you throw a stick for the lion doesn't chase the stick. The lion has his eye on you, the stick thrower. So that's another, sometimes these little metaphors are just helpful to give you a sense of the attitude. When the attention is gathered, your own mind is throwing sticks out every second. And without any gathered lion-like mind, you have a little doggy mind. You just chase after every little worry or wonder or self-doubt or criticism or end of the world thought gets thrown out. You just chase after it. But that lion mind is the mind that we cultivate when we practice awareness with breathing. Where we allow the thoughts to come and go in the background and you stay present with, well, at first, just with the breathing, the breath sensations. Present with observing phenomena. Okay? That's that kind of lion-like mind. It's not just chasing after the little toys, but has its eye on the source. So that's one aspect. And again, sometimes in the face of sometimes this is when you say like, oh, but there's really all these problems happening. So, so I don't have time for this little cutesy, mindfulness or, meditation. that's very tempting. I get it, but it's wrong. The move to unify your attention is not a reflection of the kind of like that there's nothing to attend to or to deal with or worry about. It's saying, when this house is not at all stable, you go attend to things and it's going to be much more of a mess. Yeah. So maybe even just for a few moments, get this a little bit collected, even a little bit more. The pause. Yeah. So that's practical. It's not metaphysical. It's practical. So second layer, that's one layer. Sometimes people think that unifying of the attention, like with the breathing or the body, or just gathering the mind with a single object, that's supposed to bring a kind of reliable or ultimate stability. But the second layer of stability has to do with including everything, including whatever's happening in awareness, but really it's the allowing it to be here. That may seem like a contradiction in relation to what I just said. But first the unifying of the mind, then the allowing of what's here to be here. And that's very important. And you can play with this yourself, because when there is a allowing of the states and sensations and feelings and the reaction that's present, that allows another order of unification. That's the unification that includes, as opposed to the unification that in a sense could be said to exclude. Right? Like, if there's if your child is out playing outside or something and you're worried about them, and you say like, and maybe there's like something that's actually to worry about, like there's a very busy street, or your child is not old enough to really understand how the street works or what have you. And you say like, oh, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to unify my attention with the breathing. How do you think that's going to work? You're sort of like trying to push that at bay and focus on this. That's going to be very tense. So the idea is is the other order is the welcoming of what's actually present for you. Again, without any cultivation of the stability, that's going to be a little challenging. Welcoming the thoughts, welcoming the feelings, welcoming the sensations, the emotions. Yeah, that's that open presence. And this is sometimes hard to talk about, but I will try, of course. It's hard to talk about the subtler aspects of the psyche and how it responds to to the ways we orient. So many of you have had this experience. You're in a conversation with somebody that is difficult. And maybe it's your partner, maybe it's a relative, maybe it's a friend, and maybe it's a coworker or your boss or what have you. Maybe it's an employee, could be anybody. You're in a conversation and it's just like tense, and you're confused, and it's difficult, and you have lots of feelings, and it's just a kind of it's occluding. A lot of challenging conversations are like this. And as you have the conversation, you get clearer about what's really happening. Maybe the other person gets clearer too, but you get clearer internally. Maybe you get clearer about, like, you're arguing about some point, but you're clear internally, like, oh, what this person did is not okay with me. And I need to talk about it. or whatever it is. You probably notice, and you've had this experience, of the mind clarifying in those moments. You understand now what's in the field. Or it could be some situation with your life. You're facing some very difficult conditions. And at some point, the shift is not that the conditions resolve. It's that you are really present within what's actually happening. And there's a layer where the mind takes it in. It's almost like you've been resisting what's true. And the mind then shifts to say, no, it's like this. Yeah. I need to do this differently. You know, this set of conditions, what this person is doing, I have a problem with. I am not saying the thing I have been wanting to say. Again, I'm just trying to give a relational example of, think of what happens to your mind in those moments, the clarity that happens, the alignment that happens, and that clarity is a function of its stability. Another word for that is stability. And sometimes in those moments when in a way, the word acceptance, I don't love it because we don't tend to think of that as acceptance. That's like seeing what is here and recognizing that this is what it is. There's so many ways in which we're not doing that in relation to our own experience. We're not doing that in relation to like how scared we are. It's like, this is how scared I am. I'm this scared. Yeah, and the fact that we're not allowing that to be the way it is creates this kind of occlusion, confusion, tension, and the mind is kind of like unstable in relationship to it because it's not clear. It's not seeing, it's not allowing it. Yeah. It's not being with the truth of this moment. Sometimes even the relative truth of this moment. And I'm talking about this because that movement, as unfamiliar as it might be, you all have had an experience of that kind of clarity, where it's like the thing is exactly as much of a total disaster as it was before, but you see the disaster it is. You've kind of like accepted in a sense that it's like this, not that it should be like this, but it's like, this is the way it is. And you're moving from here, you're taking like this step. That clarity, I call that stability. But that's also a function of being in relationship to what's true for you. And it's hard to, a lot of times we think, I know what's true for me, right? And this is the part where it's sometimes hard to talk about because our own level of awareness of the degree to which we're in touch with this can be all over the place. But I want to just call you to, if now or later, to reflect on this when you're clearly in touch with what's true and the stability that brings. I've had this experience so many times in conversations where literally my eyesight feels clearer as soon as I know, oh, this is what's true for me. It's like everything clarifies, nothing's resolved, but it's clear and the mind is still. I may still not know what to do. The mind is still, and it's because of that alignment with what's true, the clarity. So we want to be in relationship to that. That's also a way of cultivating stability. It's not intuitive. We tend to think, if I let this in, if I admit this, if I let myself know how much I don't like that, or how frustrated I am about this, or how scared I am every day, or how much anxiety, or what my mind is even doing. If I let myself know that, of course, we don't think this consciously, I'll just, so we keep it all at bay, and the mind is just, and we stay in this kind of fuzzy world of, but the clarity of being with what's true. So use that as a kind of like, oh, I want that. That is, let's just say that's better. Not that it should be like that all the time, but when you arrive at that, it's clearer. Yeah. And that makes it, I won't say easier, but it's qualitatively different. So I'm saying that because a core part of our practice is being present with what is, which includes knowing what is in a deep way, in a direct way, and actually welcoming it in awareness. And this, luckily, awareness is this vast, or awareness, luminous consciousness, being or presence, luckily, this is very vast, and it can include a lot, because space is vast, it can include a lot of content, planets, galaxies, world systems, and black holes. Yeah. But so because it's vast, and so that's this aspect of including, counterintuitive, but very important. Important directionally. Not that you'll be able to do that in any moment as a move, but directionally it's important. Oh, I'm scared. And this is what it's like right now. This is what my mind is saying, actually saying right now. This is what I'm seeing right now in the mind. This is actually what's happening. Yeah. Or I'm really angry. And this is the way it feels right now in the body. It's this angry. And these are the justifications and the stories that are appearing. I'm seeing them in real time. This is the images that are popping up from moment to moment about what. So that's what I'm in relationship to right now. So that's another dimension of stability. In Zen, in Chan, they talk about that as the great way. The great way is the way that includes. Yeah, it's the open way. It's the path that isn't a narrow thing you're trying to stay on. It's the path that includes this. It's the path where you can't fall off it, because what is here is what's included. Yeah, again, it's not easy to include what's here always, but that's that relationship to what's true clarifies. And that it clarifies, I'll say it fortifies. And again, sometimes that happens just in a conversation with somebody where you both talk about what's really happening for you and you feel that settling. Nothing is different, but someone else heard you and you said what was true and it's settling. Those are pointers. We can support each other in being with what's true, in being in truth. Yeah. When you're in truth in that way, doesn't mean you're saying everything that's true, but when you're aligned with what's true for you, watch your eyesight get clearer. Yeah. Notice your being settle. Again, and then we move from here. Does it mean our movement is easy or that life is easy? It doesn't. But it is different when we're coming from from that unification of being, from the beingness, or this element of truth, alignment. It's qualitatively different. So I'm saying this to you as something to explore as a support. Again, one of the big traps here is that often we think, if I know what's true, I have to be able to fix it or do something about it. And that is sometimes a trap, because often you don't know what to do about it and you can't fix it in the moment. And sometimes we think, well, those are tied together. So actually knowing it and not being able to fix it is going to be worse. Yeah. So that's another way we kind of convince ourselves not to. But I would invite you to uncouple those, because actually that clarity is very, in settling and presence in relationship to what's true, that is very important before you know what to do. And you can be in the not knowing. Again, notice that in conversations, you haven't resolved anything, but your mind has clarified, you know where you are. That's a kind of orienting, to know where you are. You know what is here. Yeah. When we're not oriented in that way, just literally physically, we feel disoriented. And that's why that aspect of like trying to put your attention on your breath sensations when there's actually a threat in the environment is not a good recipe for stability. That's just, that's only in service of you learning how to gather and collect. So that's another layer. The third layer has to do with being itself, presence itself. Let's say awareness itself, consciousness itself. Let's say being itself. And this may not be for situations where you need to take absolutely immediate action. There are a lot of situations where you're not going to take any immediate action, like every night when you're going to bed. Or every morning when you wake up and there's not, you're not going to solve climate change this morning. You're not going to You know, your house is not in immediate danger in this moment. Then you just take, when you have an immediate situation, you take care of what's immediate. If it's really life-threatening, then you do, of course. However, a lot of the time, so there's the unifying of the attention right here with the body and the breath and what's happening right now. There's the opening to include what's happening. This is like the great way, or we could call it the settling that comes from the mind that welcomes what's true, or the mind that accepts what's true, or the mind that allows the truth to be known or primary. And then there's this other dimension, which is the dimension of being itself. You say being is already here. So sometimes, just practically, you say like, I think directionally, that's why I said directionally, we want to be more in touch with what the inconvenient truth. And many of you who've known me for a long time know that's my favorite, not my favorite movie, but one of my favorite movie titles, Inconvenient Truth. Because the truth is often inconvenient, and that's why we don't want to take it in, even our personal relative truth in this moment. I'm not interested in what this person is saying, but I'm supposed to be. So it's like, we don't want to even accept the inconvenient truth of what's true for us in moment to moment relationally. But so that aspect of but there are times, again, so directionally, we want to be in the welcoming business of our own mind and body states, our own thoughts, because they're present in you. Yeah, it's not like you have to welcome, what other people are doing that are, not necessarily, but you have to welcome what's present in your own experience. Yeah, in order for there to be any of that second aspect of, the mind settling with what's true. But practically in any moment, there may be times when the mind is just so overwhelmed, it's like clarity or what's true is just like you're not finding it. It's totally stirred up and completely chaotic. You go to your breathing and it's like a second. It's like, oh, there's no unity here. There's no unification. There's no relative level even accepting of what's true. I don't even know what's true. It's just a total mess here. Maybe many of you can relate to that experience. And that is a common state of affairs periodically. And luckily, there's this third order aspect of stability, which is connecting with being itself. So throughout all your experiences, I'm saying this all the time, you're here. Beingness is here. And you might notice when the mind is totally crazy, it's like, am I here? Is being, you say I, if you go look for yourself, you don't find anything there that's stable except for being. Except for this sense that you are here. You're here because presence is here. Yeah? So there's an aspect of this presence that's always here, and as I say all the time, it's the ground of everything that's appearing. But even if that is not so clear to you, just resting in your own presence. Just come back to, is presence here? Am I here? The answer is always yes. Can I just rest in this presenceness? Whatever the mind is doing, whatever the senses are doing, whatever story, can I just connect with this aspect that's here? Of course, it's here with the eyes open too, but just that may be an easier way to you to feel, oh, this presenceness. And sometimes you can imagine, it's like, oh, if my thoughts went away, if sounds went away, sights went away, there was no feeling in the body, you can sense that, oh, I'd still be here. There'd be this beingness is here. Okay, so that's just the little words, but that's something that you can just play with. Presence is always present. You are always present. Beingness is always here throughout all your experiences. But the content of experience, that which appears within being, what we usually identify with as me, my thoughts, my feelings, my sensations, my experiences, my sense perceptions, all this stuff is what we're usually identified with, but we don't notice being itself. And being, of course, not something you can see, but it is something you can in a way relax into, like relax into being, or just let your kind of sense of, just merge into presence, beingness, just this underlying existence. It's the only thing you're certain of. You're here. You know you are having experience, and nobody could tell you that you're not. You'd argue with them. So that beingness, that's always here. And usually we're trying to sort out the content all the time. And that can become a place, a domain of refuge, of resting in the beingness. As we start to recognize the qualities of this beingness, we start to recognize that's not something I have to close my eyes and go to. This is actually here and is the ground of all of this beingness. So that's the third layer, we could say, or aspect. Yeah. The first two support, when the mind is equally receiving this aspect of beingness is much easier to sense, because a lot of our pushing and pulling on experience keeps us from sensing that which underlies it all, which is here throughout, which is in a sense the most real part of our experience, is that this experience is happening, that I'm here, and that's your own beingness. So again, say, well, how does beingness help climate change? How does beingness going to affect what? This is where we want to move from. Yeah. From being connected with being, from being present with what's true, from having our mind and body and attention unified. Yeah. Now we can take a step forward. Yeah. A step with clear seeing. Yeah. Including clear seeing of the mind and our uncertainty about the future. Yeah. Because again, human beings, and you know this, have lived through and have progressed through and come through unspeakable challenges, things that seemed every step of the way impossible, or we didn't even have the idea of what was possible. And so there's a tremendous capacity in the human spirit. And at any step along the way, there's plenty of reason, very reasonable reasons to despair. Think of every social movement, right? Think of, facing disease before, the microbe hunters, before we understood how, what caused diseases. Just every step along the way. Think of, just the civil rights movement, all the leaders, think of Nelson Mandela in South Africa, like all of these places where it's just like there's every reason to despair. And yet so important that we not. Not that we not feel despair, because of course you all will, but that we apply what we know, that we use the practice to watch our own despair, to watch how it formulates with our certainty about the future. Now, I know you look out the window, it's just like, it's only August here, and we're already in like an unprecedented fire season. This is not to deny any of that. This is happening. But our life experience is moment to moment, and how we meet it does matter. And it's very easy not easy, I should say, but our most reasonable doubts and fears and despair and reasons for despair are the most dangerous ones. And those are the ones we need to meet. We need to meet all of our experience, hopefully, with awareness. Those are the ones we really need to meet with awareness, our certainty about that. It's not to say you're not right, but it might not be right in the way you're imagining it. And what's possible is what you don't know. And so this is important because how we meet, again, it's important, what's the right word? Functionally. Right? We need the human spirit to continue meeting moments with our full presence, with all of our mental resources, with our creativity, with our compassion, with our capacity to connect and support each other through difficulties, right? In every human life. I know so many of you I know have lived through things that, you have a, because you say it's like your normal life, you don't think of it as heroic, right? But I would say it's in the territory of the heroic, what human beings face with, just being connected to other human beings we love, being in this existence with, people in the states that they're in, what you've lived through, come through, disease and, illness and challenges and loss, that is, so many of you who I know, that spirit is not to be ignored. That is powerful. And we should celebrate it more. I want to celebrate it more. So again, I offered these three aspects, and I think it's actually very important that we draw on our resources in this way for the benefit of each other. Yeah. And I think to live in this way, in touch with our own values, moving in alignment with what we care about in this moment, even if we don't know what it will lead to, we don't know if it will lead to anything, we don't know the results of our actions, I think that's already very worthy, heroic, admirable. And I think that is in a sense, a victory in itself for us. So please use your practice. Don't abandon it in the place that's most important. Use what you have. Cultivate, practice, use this time in this way. And let's move through together. Okay. So that was a bit general, but trying to include some of your, or I don't know if it's general, but it didn't cover every aspect of the questions that came in. But hopefully it was, did something or addressed some of it. So I'm just going to take a few moments and to just look at these questions, and I will, I'll respond to some of them. Okay, here's a question. It's sort of a, I don't know if it's a technical meditation question. It says, "Hi, Will. I've been contemplating the notion of impermanence in my practice by paying special attention to the endings and beginnings of objects of awareness. And if you're doing that, I would just add, you're paying attention to the actuality of impermanence, not just the notion of it. Right? You're using that concept to look at what's happening, and you're noticing the arising of experiences and the endings of them. And usually both of those are not as such so noticed. You say it's been very enjoyable in doing so. And in doing so, this question came up. Is it your experience we can be aware of two things at the same time? Or would you say that it is likely an illusion? I sometimes notice the arising of a sound, for example, in the sense that I'm at the same time aware of a body sensation. And I wonder if I'm aware of both simultaneously or if they're happening in sequence at a speed I cannot notice yet." Functionally, it's important that you can be aware of two things simultaneously. This is one of those places where sometimes the the idea of what's true can get in the way of your actual practice. So in the way that if you tried to live your life in accordance with quantum physics, it would not, I don't even know how you would do that, right? And I don't understand quantum physics. Maybe quantum physicists don't understand quantum physics, but I certainly don't. But it's a little bit like that. It's like you have to live in the Newtonian physics world, even if on some level there's this other truth that is also true. So I think because sometimes people read the texts or things like that, where it says things like you can only be aware of one thing in any mind moment. And then they start to live according to that idea. And that is not that functional. And I think it's can be harmful, because actually there's an important aspect of the unifying and the kind of, rather than splitting the attention into like this and that artificially, like this moment, if you think that way, it will appear that way. Whereas if you think more holistically, like awareness, more like this field and experience appearing within it, and sometimes you're aware of the body and sounds, or even I say that breathing with thoughts, and so you're functionally aware of many things at once, like a symphony, where you can be aware of the whole symphony at the same time. So that's kind of important. Let's say, yes, you can be aware of many things at the same time in the field of awareness. Now, maybe at some level, they're happening mind moment by mind moment in very rapid succession, extremely rapid succession, in a way that puts together a picture that is a whole. But and sometimes one might experience it that way, but you're not living that way most of the time functionally. So if you try to, maybe even you've had an experience like that, and then you think like, no, it's happening like this, and then you try to make your mind accord to that, and you'll just split yourself up. It will be like the opposite of unification, like fragmentation. So I wanted to respond to this because I actually think it's kind of important. Sometimes the idea you have, even if it's right, on some level, can actually take you in an unhelpful direction. So I much prefer practicing with this idea. Of course, you can be aware of many things at the same time, just like you can hear a whole symphony at the same time, in the relationship between, and the more still and unified the mind is, the more you hear the relationship between instruments, almost the architecture of the music. And similarly, when you're in presence, you're aware of the symphony of sounds and sensations and thoughts, and all of it appearing in this field of presence, or as an expression, as the functioning of the field of presence. So, so here somebody commented, it's challenging to focus on the breath with the air quality being so bad around us. You had to switch to sound and body sensations as a primary object in the last few days. I think that's very important. The breathing is not what's ultimate. The breathing is just a convenient device for stabilizing our attention. But the breathing, if you have asthma, or you have some kind of breathing difficulty, or you have, COVID, or you have this respiratory thing, and then your breathing is not going to be a refuge, right? And I know many, there are, some of you in our Sangha have had COVID and practiced through it or been through it in various ways. And of course, the breathing then is not a refuge. Yeah, it's the opposite. So exactly what you said, you shift the object that you're using to support the stability to being something else. Could be the sense of the body, could be the feeling of the feet on the floor, touch points, could be sounds, just the hearing of sounds, could be the visual field, it can be anything that you use to help stabilize the attention as a beginning. And then of course the underlying refuge. And then from that stability, then you're being with the thoughts and feelings and sensations that come up, and practicing with that moment by moment, of course. And also, of course, the refuge in beingness itself, or the, tapping into the underlying presence that's actually not even dependent on the body, right? The body Again, we use what's more stable in our experience as a support for awareness. But this body is not the ultimate refuge. I mean, that should be very clear. Right? This body is in various states of breaking down, and not a reliable refuge in any kind of way, and certainly for the long term. Right? So, but even in the short term, when you're going through illness, not the body will not feel like a refuge. The refuge is in that which is here all the time, which is allowing even the body to appear. The body appears within what? Beingness, presence, and awareness. So all of these relative practices, like, using hearing as an anchor, or the breathing as an anchor, these are all, or the body, those are all like supportive elements for stabilizing, or supporting us in stabilizing in presence. It's the presence of beingness. Not taking refuge in that which is, in some kind of ultimate way, in that which is really ungovernable, which includes our bodies. So thank you for that. I think that's important. Oh, here's one. During meditation, we often use the breath as a means to refocus awareness. But during the rough and tumble of an ordinary day, are there similar techniques to bring us back? While we're late to an appointment, burning toast, or arguing over the safety of the air quality. I love the specifics, but thank you for that. It's good to like land it. We all, late to an appointment, burning toast, or arguing over the safety of air quality. Yeah, there are. The breath is fairly intangible when you're in a very volatile situation. So I do think that a few things can be helpful. One is feeling your feet on the floor, just the contact of your feet on the floor. That can be very helpful because it's grounding, and it's far away from the stirred up emotions, which are mostly up here, and the thoughts that are mostly up here, just that feeling of the feet. Another thing that can be very helpful, and often, especially in the arguing over the safety of the air quality, and I just mean that in the sense of, especially in a conversational domain, is actually breaking contact with the person you're talking to. Sometimes that almost seems like a taboo, to like look away. Look away, turn away, feel your body standing, connect with seeing, take a few breaths. So those are a few different things you can connect with. Yeah. But sometimes that breaking of contact allows you to contact what's here. So that just can take a second. It can just look like you don't have to turn your back on the person. You can just look to the side. It could look like you're being thoughtful, just you're connecting here, feeling the feet, taking a breath. As you practice body, full body awareness, your body will start to feel like inhabiting the body, start to feel grounding. And it can even, as you just inhabit the body, affect the quality of the breathing just by being present in the body. So those are a few things. Another thing that can help you come back are just little phrases you say to yourself that are like reminders of, just reminders of what's true. And you can make up your own, right? But like anything that it involves, rushing, well, I don't know. I'd have to make some up for you, but yeah. Rushing is this state of mind, you can say like, does rushing get me there faster? Or something. Yeah, and arguing is sort of like, or anything that involves another person, coming back to your deeper intention for the relationship. And often we don't do that in the middle of an argument. Just break contact, come back to like, what is important to me in this? And often it's like, what's really important to you is like the quality of the relationship. And usually in an argument that's not what's happening. So sometimes those little reminders of like, what's important? What is this? Where am I? Those kinds of phrases can bring you, bring you back. So I mean, if you wanted to go another level with the rushing thing, it's sort of like, anyway. We never go anywhere, right? We're always here. So you could make up some, but anyway, that'll sound too wishy-washy if I say it like that. It's like we're never ahead of where we are. So that you can keep coming back to, like, where am I going? You're that might sound confusing. Okay, here's one I want to respond to. I don't know how to find equanimity in these times. I don't know how to accept that the universe is unfolding in just the way it should and not want to change things. That's an important one to address, because that accepting what's actually happening in the present, meaning accepting that it's happening, is very different than the flavor of accept that the universe is unfolding in the way it should. That's a bit of a new age idea that I don't subscribe to, like, at all. And this might be a subtle thing, but it's actually really material. That there's this idea sometimes like everything is happening according to some cosmic plan, in the sense that, like, not in the sense that everything is happening due to like an unthinkable number of conditions and actually they're just happening like that. So this is what should be happening, just in the sense that it's what the conditions are allowing to happen. There's a real difference between that and this is what should be happening, which is kind of like, I don't know if that's a theistic idea of certain type that I don't know the origin of, but or just a new age idea that like this is all some kind of like, oh, the cosmic plan that's going, it kind of like with the implication it's going where it's supposed to be going, like some good place. That's added. That is extra. I don't subscribe to that. Right? So I think that it's sort of like we need to explode that idea. But there is something, so I think it's the idea of acceptance that is objectionable, right? It's not that you should accept, like I said about the conversation, this is what's actually happening. It's not a mistake because it's what's really going on. And it's not being created by some magical force. This is the set of conditions unfolding. It's lawful in that way. Like the sum total of human behavior is the sum total of like the state of human minds right now. That's the way it is. It's not the way it should be, because the should is just like not that helpful a concept. It's the way it is, it's the way nature is. And of course, we as human beings, no, we don't have to just like leave nature alone. Oh, there's a flood coming. I just like won't build a barrier or won't redirect the river. No, we build a barrier. We redirect the river. We try to save what we can save. We try to save each other. We try to support, right? But it's that aspect of like, the river is here. We don't think like the river should be, I mean, yeah, of course, sometimes think like, oh, this river is teaching me a lesson. Do you get that point? It's like, and the river might be like people in power, right? Or people in politics, or people really, it's like, or what we're doing to the climate, like literally what we're doing to the climate with our behavior. It's not that that should be happening, it's that it is happening. And there's an aspect of accepting that there's a lawfulness to this. Yeah, not lawful in the sense of it's inevitable that it all continue this way, because we are also acting within it. But I want you to, again, I can't explain it perfectly. It's hard to explain, but I want you to notice psychologically the difference for you. And maybe you just need to find an example that's really closer to your direct experience with it, with another individual or something, where it goes from acknowledging what's the conditions that are here. That's what we call acceptance, meaning it's like surrender. You're not surrendering to the fact that it has to be there. You're surrendering to the fact that this is the way it is. That's what brings the clarity. Yeah. And that whole idea of this should be happening, that's some kind of new age mumbo jumbo, in my view. Yeah, maybe, maybe that might piss some of you off. You can not agree with that. But what we make of what is here, that is huge, right? And there is an aspect of us that is unconditioned, that is not dependent or based in the conditions. So I think that to me, that puts us in a place of empowerment. Yeah. And while also surrendering to the truth of conditionality. Yeah. This is this is causes and conditions unfolding. And we may not like the causes of, like, the causes that get certain person elected and not another person elected. We may not like the causes, but the causes are here. That's what we have to deal with. We have to deal with what's actually here, and not what we wish were here, right? And if we don't deal with what's here, we're not going to deal with it. And so I think that's so important, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed in the domain of should. Yeah. So yeah, again, let me just go on another layer. I actually think that the idea of God can be very helpful, not even, but sometimes not in the way, this idea of like God is this like entity that has a plan for you. That could be helpful too. But this idea of like surrendering to what is, like if when you have the idea that God, and we could just say call the vast set of conditions of the universe God manifesting stuff, when you have that idea that God has brought this, it actually, part of what's functional about that is that it actually brings you to accept that it's what's here. And then your response to it might be more skillful. Yeah. So I don't know whether, I'm not saying anything about the metaphysics of God, but I think there's something beautiful about that idea, as long as you don't, yeah, but then there's this whole other layer of the should, what should be happening. But I do think that that aspect of, when people are in relationship to the, this is like, oh, this is God's will. There can be something very powerful and actually very practical and functional about that that's very related to having a deep understanding of conditionality. That's very related to me. Those are not necessarily two separate things. I also feel like, when we talk about, formless being that transcends everything and allows everything to appear, you could use the word God for that. Yeah. That which shines through all of us, that, I am that I am, uh, allows creation to appear. That's just, using different language. So what I'm saying is not even I don't think in contradiction to God language. So I just want to say that, because I know many of you have different traditions that you're a part of. I just think that there's actually something in that question which reflects more of like a new age idea than even some of the, uh, some of the deeper ways that the Abrahamic religions, or the, religions, or let's just say the theistic religions have of that, of God's will as something kind of more. This one's complicated, so I'll just move on to the next to the next question. Let's see. First, let me see what our time is like. I'll just take a few more. Um, Again, just looking at the time and seeing what I have time to respond to. There's a question here about patience. Can you please share some wisdom about cultivating the quality of patience? I often notice a low din of impatience, especially related to long-term pursuits. You know, patience is one of the perfections or the paramis in Theravada and, you know, in all of the Buddhisms, we could call them. There's a good chapter on patience in Shantideva's Way of the Bodhisattva, just a shout out for that. But I think, just to say something simple here, I think one of the best ways to cultivate any quality is to be really present with its opposite. Yeah, so rather than trying to cultivate patience, observing impatience, right? Because presence is not bound by what it observes. So, you know, I think a big shift might be for you to really be present with impatience as an energy. And it's just, and you might notice it everywhere. Like it's just, and just to stay with that. Yeah, because when you stay with that, then it's less likely to drive everything. And you might also just get more in touch with what's fueling it. And I think that's a very important way to same with fear, you know, so like, how can I cultivate fearlessness? And I think the way to cultivate fearlessness is to be with fear. Yeah, I don't know if that leads to fearlessness, but it makes you less afraid of fear. So I think that's actually, you know, nobody wants this assignment. Nobody wants to be present with impatience. That is like, sign me up for anything else. I would like to reflect on patience. I would like to read books about patience. I would like to, just like fear. Nobody wants to sit with their fear. Everybody was like, tell me about how affirmations I can say to myself. How can I like pump myself up? But don't make me sit with fear. But that's what I think is really profound and really transformative. It's like, yeah, let me be with this impatience. Use your meditative practice to observe it as an energy moving. And that's how it can start to unwind itself. That's so important, that energy, you know, and you also may get a sense of what it's about for you in a way, because there can be different aspects that are, but you don't have to go digging for that. Just being present with it, it will start to, like anything you're present with, like a relationship or another person, will start to reveal itself as you spend time with it. And that one is driving so many lives, restlessness, impatience, and it's also a great you know, destroyer of depth. And it's sort of like impatience makes us skip over experience. We're always on to the next thing, and you just see what my finger is doing when it's on to the next thing. It's never, it doesn't land. And so patience is a parami because it has that quality of like landing, actually being here. I was like, oh, I'm here right now, and I'm not on to the next. So when we're here, as what I've been talking about all night, when we're here, what's possible is really quite different. There's like dimensionality to what we bring to what's here, clarity, seeing, the power of our own mind and heart. So it's like, yeah, and you see much more clearly what's here because we're actually being here. So I think that's I would encourage you to do that. Just spend a week observing impatience and see if it doesn't have an effect. I would imagine that it would. Okay, so so thank you for being here. Somebody wrote in the chat, the last thing, computers create impatience. And I would say to you, although I very much empathize, because I too feel impatience a lot when dealing with computers. Computers don't create impatience, but impatience, we could say, might reliably respond to the ungovernability of your computer. or the interface. So, but impatience arises in us, and that's the only place to deal with it. But I'm not saying that as that I get more impatient when dealing with computer things than most places. So so yeah, well, let's somebody asked, somebody's not letting me post to the chat. Not sure why. Somebody asked for the reference of the thing I mentioned, the book I mentioned. I mentioned The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva in the 9th century. But you can find copies of it now. There's a chapter on patience. And I read from that, something from that book. Yeah, thank you for posting that. For some reason it's not letting me post. So let's just take a moment and we can kind of formally close. Again, if you would like to support these offerings, you can donate on the Sunday Sangha page. There's a Venmo account, WKZ Sunday Sangha, or a PayPal there. I think that's Will at what is it? WKZ Sangha or something like that. I can't post anything tonight, but I thank you for your support of these offerings in that way too. So thank you for that. And also helping me to pay the rent on our physical space, which I'm still plugging away at, even though I know for now, and would love to be able to continue supporting that space and having it continue to exist so we can meet in person there again, whenever this pandemic resolves, and also just the Zoom fees and all that stuff to keep these accounts going. So, so let's sit together and we'll formally close just for tonight, and I'll look forward to sitting with you tomorrow if you want to sit in the morning. So may each one of us, and in our own way, continue to look deeply into the nature of things and into the nature of our own mind and body, our own heart, your own being, consciousness. And may this clear seeing, this clear knowing, free us. And may this be for the benefit of all beings, everywhere. Well, thank you all. And just to say, I haven't gotten around to posting any of the previous talks for the past number of weeks. And just a lot going on here. The start of virtual school and my wife starting back up because the school year is starting with her work. And so I'm going to try to get that. And of course, all the stuff I'm doing. So just try to get, I'll try to get that stuff up too on the YouTube channel soon. And it just started raining here. I know there's a chance of storms again. So please stay safe, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And I look forward to sitting with you in the morning. Good night, everyone.